Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, joined today by Alan Saunders. We're going to talk about the Steelers defense that is yet again the most expensive defense in the NFL. Is that a big deal? Is that always going to be the case? We'll talk about that. How do they fix communication issues with so much turnover and a lot more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More on Gametime later. As I said before, we're joined by himself, Alan Saunders, who's not in his normal location. He's on vacation. We are all enjoying the downtime of the NFL before things get hot and crazy in Latrobe. But Alan, want to talk to you about defense in this episode a little bit more. Jalen Ramsey coming in for Minkah Fitzpatrick. We've seen some numbers come in for like spot rack, but I think everyone's still finalizing things there. But the bottom line is that the Steelers are still going to be a defensive-leaning team for all the things that they've added with DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers and the investments in the offensive line. This still, if they're going to be a playoff team, if they're going to be a competitive team that competes for, with the Ravens to try to get the division, it needs the defense to play at a high level, which is another reason why I still say whenever someone asks me, they must be trading TJ Watt, right? I just don't think it's the case because if you trade TJ Watt, this defense goes from pretty good to how good can they be?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're still going to be an expensive defense. I don't think there's any interest in trading TJ Watt. I mean,
Agreed.
It's just not happening. So, yeah.
No, I'm right with you there, but I want to get to this question because right now, the Steelers are the most expensive defense as far as salary cap wise. We look at overthecap.com. That's not accounting for they haven't accounted for the trade yet and how that'll factor in things. But still, the next closest team in spending was $150 million. We got a question here about that from Grant out in South Dakota. Grant, take it away.
Hey, Chris. This is Brant representing Steelers Nation out in South Dakota. I just wanted to talk real quick about how much money the Steelers have been spending on the defense. I think this is 4 years in a row, and in that whole time, we haven't had a top 5 defense. And so I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on, is it worth it to keep spending that much money on our defense compared to our offense, which has been not very good over the past several years? And also, should we not expect to have like a top 3 defense every year with how much we are paying them compared to the rest of the league? Thanks so much. I love the show. I hope you have a good one.
Thank you. And it was Brant, not Grant. My apologies there on the misspelling there. Thank you as always, you can call in like Brant did to 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We try to get you on the show here. Alan, this whole thing, he is correct. This is the 4th straight year that the Steelers are projected to have spent the most on defense in the NFL. And in those 4 years, they have not been a top 5 defense. They've been top 10 in 3 of those 4 years. Actually, no, excuse me. This is the 4th year. So they've been a top 10 defense each of those years because this will be the 4th time that's happened. They were a top 6 defense in 2023. But I look at that and I hear him out on his question. But I also think that sometimes the whole most expensive thing kind of gets lost in the sauce when we look at just like the reason why certain players are being paid for, when if certain players are the best, but sometimes certain veterans are just a little bit more expensive that they add in there. What say you about the Steelers and how they've done spending? Because this hasn't always been the case. The Steelers used to have the most expensive offense in the NFL back in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're a team that's like the Steelers and frankly, like most successful teams, you draft and then you pay the good players that you draft to stay. And when you look at the Steelers draft successes recently, there haven't been a lot of them, for one. And the ones that have come on the defensive side of the ball. So they've paid good money to T.J. Watt, Cam Heyward, Alex Highsmith, guys like that, to go play defense. And when you miss, you got to fill in on, in free agency. But right now, the Steelers' offense is left tackle, rookie contract. You got DK making some good money, but Calvin Austin, rookie contract. You got Pat Freiermuth making money, but Troy Fautanu, rookie contract. Jalen Warren, very reasonable restricted free agent contract. Caleb Johnson, rookie contract. So, we don't know if those guys are draft hits or not. If the Steelers go out and Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu play like the Steelers hope they will, then they're going to have to sign those guys to big contracts. And all of a sudden, 10 years from now, people are going to be like, oh, my God, Chris, the Steelers have the most expensive offense. How do they ever spend any money on defense? It just moves in cycles. It's not that important. There's not any real correlation between offensive and defensive spending. The teams that spent the most on offense last year, sure, the Chiefs are number one, by the way, drafted very well with Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey. So, yeah, you would, right? But also the rest of the Falcons, the Bengals are the next two in offensive spending. You got the Rams and the Lions there. The Panthers are next. It's not just spend more money on offense and you win. It's not the way it works. You spend on the good players that you can get, and things work cyclically, and it's kind of a non-story for me.
I mean, the Rams had last year. The Rams had the most expensive offense by far, more than the Chiefs, almost by $21 million. Right behind the Chiefs, though, the Indianapolis Colts. So, it's not when people say that. I think that there has been this push, this narrative to try to paint. Well, if you spend money here, that definitely means you should be the best there. That's not necessarily the case. That's not how roster construction works. Oftentimes, a unit is propelled because they've drafted so well, and some of those players are on rookie deals. When you think about, for example, bringing up Brant's question, the last time the Steelers had a top five defense was 2019 and 2020. Some of the biggest deals there were T.J. Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick were on their rookie deals, so they couldn't be the most expensive at the time. But you know what? They were paying Cam Heyward. They were paying other guys, and they allowed them to go get Joe Hayden and Steven Nelson. And so that's part of it. And so naturally, did it matter that they eventually had to pay those guys? No, it was just a natural progression of we want to keep our stars for longer, and that's part of the game. There, it doesn't automatically mean you're going to be better than everyone else. You're trying to keep your core players. Now, what's going to help with that is if you hit on the draft picks around those core players. If you can have those core players on your roster while you're hitting on these other core players. For example, if Artie Burns and Terrell Edmonds are all-star players, that defense might be that defense would have been Super Bowl caliber, because then you would have had if you would have had an all-pro light corner, an all-pro safety, one they probably don't even trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick if Sean Davis is like that. So if you add those guys in, if you do those defensive additions that way, and Terrell Edmonds is like that, the Steelers defense is good, but it wouldn't have been because they're that expensive right away. It would have been because they were young guys coming in and playing that way. And then eventually, if you had paid them, then you'd have everything. I think that's the whole thing here, is that that they missed on certain defensive positions. They had to re-up at those. That's what the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade was for, I think, over the Sean Davis situation. And it worked out in their favor in the long run, and they kept those guys. But like I said before, with the mid-2010s off the team, they were paying the best players on their team at the time. They were trying to rebuild the defense that got old, and they missed with guys like Jarvis Jones and Jason Worrells and guys that didn't work out for the long run. And who were they paying? Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, not really, because he didn't get his big extension, but Antonio Brown. They were paying a lot of people back then to make sure the offense was one of the better units. It's just I like the way you said it goes in cycles. That's what the spending is about. It is not a direct line to what should be winning or losing.
And the other part of this is the Steelers aren't spending big money on a quarterback.
Yep.
But there was not, like, what was the alternative? Like, did you want them to sign Sam Darnold that bad?
Right.
You want to balance out the offense and the deep, like, if there was a point in which the Steelers had turned down upgrading an offensive position in favor of upgrading a defensive position, I think there would be an argument to be made there, right? But that's not what has happened. In fact, most of the Steelers' big spending and most of the Steelers' top draft picks over the last few years have come on offense. So, yeah, like if there was a quarterback out there, let's say, the Rams had cut Matt Stafford and the Steelers chose not to sign him and instead give a whole bunch of money to players on defense, well, you could look at that and be like, they probably made a mistake there. But it's not like you're holding both those things in your hand at the same time and picking one over the other very often. You're just spending money where you can and getting the players that you can. There were no further offensive upgrades to be made in free agency this offseason to spend more money on offense.
Right. And again, when they saw one, they took a swing at it this year. I think, if anything, Omar Khan has shown they're willing to take swings. They're willing to switch things up. Heck, they just got rid of a guy that we had been talking about as a pillar player for this defense, in Minkah Fitzpatrick, to say, hey, we want to get something else in there. The Steelers have shown the willingness to adapt and to change things up. And I firmly believe this team will look even more different next year when they most likely draft that quarterback and make other moves and do things. But again, I don't think they're locked into it. I'm right with you. I think that the idea of them being the most expensive defense, meaning that they need to be the best defense, or that is an overblown and overhyped talking point that I think people developed because some people just looked at it and just saw numbers and said, "Oh, well, that's a thing right there," not knowing full context, how NFL contracts work, how NFL front offices work, and how things are supposed to be built over time.
Now, I do think you can look at last year's Steelers defense and say they didn't perform as well as they're capable of.
They should have been better. Yeah.
They should have been. They could have been better. Sure. That would be the case even if you just reduced everybody's salary by 50%. I would still think that the players, the salary is sort of beside the point, right? Like, yeah, they could have been better than they were last year. They probably should have been better than they were on defense last year. I think they had the talent to be a top 5 unit. But talent and salary are not equal, and they're not supposed to be equal in the NFL landscape.
I agree entirely. We're gonna get more questions here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I remind you, this show is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be all about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever before. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal? Gametime's zone deals pick the best seats in your section for you. Ever wonder what your view will actually look like before you buy? The app on Gametime shows you a panoramic seat view right from where you'd be sitting, so there are no surprises. If you're worried about what happens if plans change, don't worry. Gametime's got you with the Gametime guarantee that has your back with cancellation protection and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's get to another question here. This one, another broader defensive question coming out of Tacoma Park, Maryland. Take it away, Mike.
Hey, Chris. This is Mike in Tacoma Park, Maryland. If communication issues and confusion were a big problem with the back end of the defense last year, why should we feel confident that it's going to be better this year with 3/5 of the defensive backfield being new guys? And I know that Slay, Ramsey, and Thornhill are all smart, savvy veterans, but there must be something to be said for continuity, right? So I guess my question is, are we going to have to endure another season where the defense looks out of sync and discombobulated for the first 5 or 6 weeks until they put it together? Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Thanks, Mike. As always, you can call like Mike did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Alan, before we dive into the whole question here, did the Steelers defense look discombobulated for the first 6 weeks of football? I thought they were pretty good when they were 4-2 with Justin Fields with the defense to start the season. Now, have they been bad at other starts? Sure, but at least last year I thought they were pretty good at the start of the season.
Well, before I answer that, I want to go back to the previous question. Our guy Grant from South Dakota, I think he's just looking out for his Mason McCormick and kind of make sure that he gets paid when that contract comes up. He said, got to make sure they spend money on offense. He's planting the seed now. See
Dakota
what you're doing,
boys looking
Grant.
out for each other.
I like it. I like it. You're looking out for your boy. I thought the Steelers defense was fine for most of the year. In fact, not fine, extremely good. They never looked out of sorts at any point during the season until very late in the year. I think they definitely had communication is a term that football players like to put on all sorts of things that happen out there that are not all strictly communication. Some bad stuff happened in the second half of last season. I think the Steelers need to own that, but I don't think you should be worried about that being a problem that carries over that way. And if you're not communicating well with the guys you got, that's one of the big reasons to not worry about getting rid of them. Like, if you have cohesion in a unit, if you have guys that are playing well together, whose presence with one another is elevating their individual play, then you should be worried about breaking those guys up. One of the big reasons that it was okay for the Steelers to trade Minkah Fitzpatrick is that the things you think you should be getting from a player like Minkah Fitzpatrick, communication and leadership, the Steelers weren't getting the benefits of those anyway. So why not make a trade and make a change? That's the time to make a change, not to be afraid of it.
I also look at it this way. If I were to say, of the positions that have been swapped out, because he said, three out of the 5 guys in the secondary are going to be different this year. Jalen Ramsey's coming in either for Beanie Bishop or for Dante Jackson. Darius Slay, same thing. And then Juan Thornhill for Minkah Fitzpatrick. I think I could confidently say 2 of those are upgrades. And upgrades in guys that can think at a high level and play at a high level at the cornerback position. And one of those is a downgrade in Minkah Fitzpatrick. But here's the thing is that, like, to your point about Minkah Fitzpatrick, I think Minkah was a good communicator that like, he got the message across. And sometimes it just comes down to guys blowing coverages, guys making simple mistakes, guys even knowing what the call is and still just having just a bad day. I always try to put it this way. Like, when people try to say, oh, how could they make such a mistake? When you're at the office and you staple something the wrong way, does someone look at you and say, how did you mess that up? In the most simplest ways, when you bump your toe when you're walking through your house, it's just these guys are making these decisions at really quick paces against big, fast individuals who are also making quick decisions. And when that's happening, there's gonna be mistakes. Stuff like that's gonna happen. And so sometimes it's like, and hey, if it keeps happening and a player's bad, it's a player's bad, but it's not like some like unfathomable, unforgivable thing most of the time. There's sometimes you're like, oh no, that was trash. But I think that part of this is that, look, one of the biggest breakdowns, and not just even communication, a guy that they were expecting to win more situations than he did was Cam Sutton. And he's not a factor in this team anymore. And even Beanie Bishop, where he got his interceptions last year, there were times where they were kind of like, we need more out of this because we need this that position to take away a certain player. If Ramsey and Porter and Slay are on the field at the same time and they're moving those guys around and they're giving them different matchups and looks and things, I think the communication might even be easier with them per se, because they're going to be able to just be like, hey, this is what it is. Let's rock. Let's do this. And you're accommodating for less mismatches on your side of the ball, because that's part of where communication is most crucial is, hey, we can't win this matchup over here. If this is one-on-one, we need help. And I think there might be less of that this year with the cornerback situation.
Yeah. And I just think like I was saying, like, you get 5 guys running man and 1 guy running zone. Like, you can call that a miscommunication. Maybe I just didn't know how to do the job. If you got 2 guys running to the same guy, you can call that a miscommunication, or you call that guy just trying to make a play and getting out of his structure. Like, I think just this like box where like it's convenient to put things in there, but there was lots going wrong in the Steelers secondary besides miscommunication last year. Guys not knowing their assignments, guys trying to make plays and get out of their assignments, and so like I don't put any impact on turnover and being able to communicate. It's just turnover is a fact of life in the NFL level. Every team is dealing with turnover at every position group at some level. The whole reason you have OTAs and minicamp and training camp is to be able to communicate. It's not anything to ever be worried about at this point, no matter how much new you have. I don't really see that as being an issue.
And you know what? Bringing back up Brant's question, which asking about top 5 defenses. When the Steelers had a top 5 defense in 2019, Minkah Fitzpatrick was very new. Steven Nelson was very new. Devin Bush.
He came in on Wednesday and played Sunday.
Exactly. And so I don't think it's that bad.
Fine.
I'm right with you.
Not too worried.
I'm right with you there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, want to take more of your questions, because that safety position is in question here. We'll discuss that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, we take another question here. We're going to take this question and answer it directly, but I want to expand upon it more because it's kind of hyper-specific. But Trent from Henning, Minnesota, got a question about the safety position.
Hey, Trent here from Henning, Minnesota. Diehard, lifelong Steelers fan. My question is ever since we made all these trades this offseason, everyone keeps talking about Jalen Ramsey going to safety and all that. What do you think about Darius Slay getting moved to safety because of his age? And he still has the skills to be able to play coverage and also probably do everything you need to as a safety. So Jalen Ramsey and Joey Porter Jr. would be our 2 starting cornerbacks, and then that would also control that gap that we need for Minkah Fitzpatrick. And we kind of have a history of, converting cornerbacks to safeties and then making a legendary defense sale. So I was just wondering what your input was on that. And thank you so much. I love the show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you with the question. As always, we appreciate all of our callers. Trent, thank you for calling in, as well as Brant and Mike for today's show. As always, that's 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Alan, a lot of people keep trying to make this a thing, moving the cornerback to the safety position. And listen, I get it. The Steelers did it a little bit with Patrick Peterson in a pinch a couple years ago. A lot of Steelers fans will remember Carnell Lake doing it in the 90s. He moved from safety to corner in reverse when Rod Woodson got hurt. But then, of course, Rod Woodson moving from corner to safety, Charles Woodson doing that. I don't know if that's always the move. I mean, maybe if they do, it would catch me off guard if they did that. I think these guys are corners. If the Steelers wanted to get a free safety for this team, they would have kept Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like, I think that asking one of these guys to flip out of the position that they've been practicing for their entire NFL careers and they've been developing their skills at, I think if they were younger, I kind of understand it. But I think that both of these guys are going to be cornerbacks. But do you disagree with me? Do you think Slay or someone else is switching from cornerback to safety in a more full-time role for the Steelers?
I think there's some give and take here. You know, I think they certainly both could do it. I think when you look at the ingredients that you want in a player to make that move from corner to safety, you want solid tackling. I think both those guys are really good tacklers, even as they've gotten into an advanced stage. Ramsey's missed tackle spiked a little bit last year, but I mean, he's been really good throughout his career. Slay has been excellent. So you got that. You want guys who still are very technical in coverage and are really good in zone coverage. I'd actually say that like probably these guys are just as good in man as they are in zone. They're not like that sort of zone cover corner, but they could do it, right? And then you want good communicators, and I think certainly, you know, Slay is definitely that, and I think Ramsey could be that as well. The thing is that if they all play outside, somebody's got to go to the slot.
Right.
And whoever goes to the slot is getting the crap beat out of them. And none of them are young. And look, it's not going to be Porter, who is not going to be dealing with 5'9" slot receivers with his length and strength, and that's not going to be his forte. So if you're an older corner and your options are go play the slot where you're playing cornerback where you played your entire career, but now you're taking on pulling guards and tackling Derrick Henry, or maybe you could go play free safety and extend your career by 4 or 5 years if you're okay at it. I think safety might be a more attractive option if you presented it to the players. I also think Juan Thornhill is better than Beanie Bishop. So the opposite is probably more attractive for the Steelers. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know how it's going to play out. I think it could go either way. If I'm Jalen Ramsey, I think you could sell me on a move to safety. He's 30. We've seen guys like Rod Woodson play safety until their late 30s. He's got like 5 or 6 more years if he pulls that off well. I think you could sell that to him in a way that I'm not sure a full-time move to slot corner is going to be as enticing.
I think that's an interesting point there. I had thought that, hey, letting him be versatile and move around at slot would be more to his skill set, because that's kind of what he had done for a lot of his career. But a move to free safety, I feel like, again, like if the Steelers wanted to get, like, a big part of why I think this trade makes sense is if you're trying to get better cornerback play at the line of scrimmage, if you're trying to jam guys a bit more, make them hold on to the football. But if you're giving away the guy who is still good at safety, like despite him not having turnovers, Minkah Fitzpatrick still did his job as being a deep ball safety pretty well. That's still a positive factor there. If you're switching that guy out for another guy who is pretty much just as expensive, let's say Jalen Ramsey in that situation, but isn't as used to that position, that's when I do have questions like, well, wait a second, what was the point of that if you got the guy that could do it naturally? I think that Slay and Porter and Ramsey, the advantage is having 3 guys. You can say, look, all 3 of you guys, we're going to work it out. We're going to have different alignments week to week. We're going to come up with different matchups. We're going to have different plans, and we are going to make sure that all 3 of you guys are a focal point of the game plan to take away of the top receiving options for teams. And then that way we can trust you guys to win more on your own. The run defense can focus on itself, and we can force more teams into more 3rd and longs. And then the pass, and if you're keeping away the short passes, the pass rush is getting there a little bit more. If the pass rush is getting there a little bit more, there's going to be some rushed throws, some bad throws that give you guys more chances of turnovers. And that's how everything can work together. And that's what I just think, in my opinion, I would not be, unless one of them shows a really good knack for it and you just see it in practice, you're like, okay, that's a free safety right there. I would not be pushing for that. I'd be letting these guys play their cornerback positions.
I think I agree with you that it's probably best for the Steelers that way. I'm just not sure that you're going to get the buy-in from the 2 older corners to go get beat up in the slot for 1,000 snaps. I do think the best answer is probably do all of the above. Play Slay at free safety some. Play Ramsey at free safety some. Play both of them in the slot some. Line up so many different ways that no matter what way you send the guys out there, the offense has no idea what kind of defense you're in. I think that's probably the best bet of all of them. Line up Slay as the safety or Ramsey as the safety in the base, and then when the nickel comes in, bring Thornhill in and move one of them down. I think that works pretty well too, but I think the best way for the Steelers to maximize the return on this trade is to be extremely multiple on defense and have all these guys doing a bunch of different stuff.
Absolutely. I think there's versatility is going to be key, moving guys around, keeping guys from being predictable where they're at, and having them understand how that relates to how they're confusing offenses. All of that is going to play an important role in things. Alan, thanks so much for joining us. Let people can find you, follow you, get more of your work.
Saunders _PGH on social media. SteelersNow.com is where you can find my written work, and my podcast, Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive, can be found on the Steelers Now YouTube page or anywhere you find podcasts.
Absolutely. He's Alan Saunders. Thank you, Alan, for joining us. Thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, social media handles. It's the same place everywhere. It's at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see you here tomorrow with another episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got Nick Faribault on. Gonna be a fun one. We'll see you then.